Hi everyone, Adam Steele here, and we are doing another mix reaction. This week we're doing something from the mid-90s that really defined the era, and that is You Oughta Know by Alanis Morissette. My good friend Warren from Produce Like a Pro just did a whole video breaking down this song, songs that change music. Go and check that out after you watch this video because he breaks down the multi-tracks and does all sorts of cool stuff with it. But today I'm reacting specifically to the mix and how it sounds. So without further ado, let's play the intro. That's right. So this was a particularly kind of interesting time in music. I'm going to change to my other screen where things were changing, because up until the mid-90s, everything that you heard on the radio pretty much was recorded onto 1-inch or 2-inch tape machines, really expensive. You had to be in a big studio, and so essentially it had to be well produced, quote unquote, for whatever that's worth. And there was a turning point, 94, 95, 96 round here, where people started using ADAT. It's basically like a VHS tape that you could record 8 tracks of audio digitally onto, and you could stack as many of these machines as you dared to. So you could have a multi-track studio. The more tapes you ran, the more you run into the risk of one of them, causing errors, breaking, all that kind of stuff. But, that kind of issue has always plagued recording studios. Anyway, I'm getting off track. This was You Oughta Know by Alanis Morissette, all tracked on ADAT. So one big leap up from a home studio, but not actually, on tape as you would have expected it. This was probably 5 to 10 years before the whole Pro Tools revolution. So this is kind of the first inkling that a decent production could be done without a massive Hollywood-style studio or, big New York studio. So, done by Glenn Ballard and Alanis Morissette. The bass on here is Flea from the Chili Peppers, and the guitar is Dave Navarro. At the time, also Chili Peppers. And you can really tell. If you've ever heard the song Aeroplane by the Chili Peppers, the bass line sounds very much like that, because that was this time period. And so I'm waffling. Let's start by listening to the track a little bit. I'm using Adapter AB, Metric AB even, Ozone 10 to pull out little EQ things, and Brainworks BX Control so we can hear tiny little details in the mix. But this starts off very quietly, so I'm going to have to pipe down a little bit. Here we go.
I want you to know that I'm happy for you. I wish nothing but the best for you both. I know the version of me. Is she perverted like me? Would she go down?
So it's a fascinating intro because it's really quiet. It starts off with a vocal. There's a little shuffly drum on the right-hand side. Let's hear that. Which isn't on the left at all. She's really quiet, and there's this little kind of guitar going. You to know that I'm happy. And it's a really weird arrangement that it catches your ear, because you go, this isn't a 1, 2, 3, 4 jing jigga jing jigga jing kind of song. You just kind of go, huh? And then it kicks in.
I know the version of me. Is she perverted like me? Would she go down on you in a theater? Does she speak eloquently? And would she have your baby? I'm sure she'd make a really excellent mother.
So I'm just going to pause it there, because you can see this isn't particularly loud. It's not hitting any limiters at this point. And the bass is kind of burbling away in the mid-range. It's really quite a driven bass line with kind of the top end rolled off, so that you get quite a thick kind of bass sound, but it's not got a lot of sub going on. That's the kick. Super clear. Because there isn't much going on in that super low end on the bass. I suppose traditionally the engineer would have expected the tape machine to kind of lift the low end out of the bass. And because it's not a tape machine, because it's ADAT, it kind of doesn't. So, yeah, not something that a lot of engineers I think were used to at that time. But yeah, the vocal currently is completely mono if I solo the sides. That's what we hear, and there's a lot of kind of widdly kind of guitars. I'm not sure if that's Glenn Ballard or if that's Dave Navarro, but it's got that kind of thing going on. And there's a chicky chick on the top. Definitely is the mid-90s. That would have been some sort of sequencer with a sample looping. A lot of the drums on this, most of them, I think that there's a couple of drum fills that are real drums, but most of it's actually drum loops. Anyway, let's get on to the really interesting stuff. So that whole section, if you're listening on monitor speakers, you'll hear kind of a big kind of crazy double vocal. On headphones, I can clearly hear that it's two vocals, one completely on the left and one completely on the right. And so if I just solo one of them, and the other one, so they're both quite clear, and then you double it, and there's this real buzzsaw of a guitar going down the middle. And that wasn't there before, but if we solo the sides, we should hear loads of vocal. That's on the one side.
And every time you speak her name, does she know how you told me you held me until you died?
And it's a really clever production technique of just, instead of doing some fancy stereo technique stuff, they've literally just gone one left, one right, let's go.
No.
And that no is off in my ear on the left-hand side. So obviously that was ad-libbed and she threw that in on a feeling on one take and it just got kept. But yeah, now the vocal will fold back down to the middle. And it's still mono on the chorus, but she's singing so loud now into the microphone. It's distorting, and you'll hear that at the end of this. She's absolutely driving that microphone, because it's a tube microphone, valve mic. She's really distorting it, and it makes it sit thick on top of the guitars, which instead of the one guitar we've had up till now, is now two guitars on the sides, and suddenly it's gone bang, big stereo rock thing.
I'm here to remind you of the mess you left when you went away. It's not fair to deny me of the cross I bear that you gave to me. You ought to know.
You can hear the distortion there. Listen to that.
Ought to know.
That's an AKG C12 microphone, which is a classic valve mic being absolutely blasted to its limits.
Ought to know. You seem
And then the exact same take, apparently, same vocal. The compressor kind of lets the volume back, but because there's no distortion on it now, suddenly it becomes this clean verse vocal, and it's a miracle of arrangement that it really feels like chorus dipping down into verse, not just because of the guitars and everything.
No, you seem very well. Things look peaceful. I'm not quite as well. I thought you should know. Did you forget about me, Mr. Duplicity? I hate to bug you in the middle of.
You can see in Reaper here how suddenly everything starts to go kind of yellowy green. That's where Alanis has really started to push the vocal. Nothing else has changed in the arrangement, but it feels like it's gone up a gear because she's gone up a gear. This is classic arrangement that makes the mix work.
No. Did you forget about me, Mr. Duplicity? I hate there was a slap in the face. How quickly I was replaced. And now you're thinking of me when you fuck her. 'Cause the love that you gave that you made was a
Isn't that interesting how there's a big da-da-da-da-da. There's a drum fill, which I think might be the real kit.
fuck her. 'Cause the love that you gave that you made was able to make it enough for you to be open wide. No.
And this time the double vocal doesn't stand out as much because there are more guitars going on now. That kind of buzzsaw guitar is louder. There's another guitar on the other side. Or at least it feels like those guitars are on the sides. It seems like they're more in the middle. Actually, that's interesting. That no has got a big reverb on it. Let's see if we can solo it on the other side. There it is. I wonder if that reverb, that plate reverb, is on both sides usually, but because there's a lot going on in the arrangement, we just don't pick it up. That's the change on the chorus. That guitar drops out. And instead of something harsh, suddenly it's much kind of nicer but fuller. And I think that makes it feel like a release at the chorus. Because there's that guitar going on. And it's quite painful. And then suddenly it's gone. That is a classic Dave Navarro guitar. The stereo vibrato thing. You hear a lot of it on the One Hot Minute album by the Chili Peppers. Quite possibly the most 90s drum loop I have ever heard. That was a cool feature. That "and you know it" was automated to be louder and really in your face, right mono, where the "no" before had been off to one side. Second chorus, there's a kind of really high guitar suddenly come in to elevate it a bit. And that's the end of the song, and I can hear there that the room that she's singing in is not massively acoustically treated, because when she's blasting, I can hear the walls rattling. And that's so distorted, but that's something that I try and teach people that I'm teaching how to mix, is that like you can get away with murder with distortion on quote unquote clean vocals in the right context, because it can really push you to the front when used in the right context. And yeah, the bass on this is really distorted, but in a lower range, because it's been kind of softened off and filtered off either with EQ or with a bass amp. And the drums are not distorted, they're really quite clean. The guitars have got an edge to them, which is definitely amp distortion, but they're not fizzy and fuzzing apart from that one guitar down the middle. So apart from the drums, everything in this mix at the end is distorted, but not by just cranking everything through the same output and distorting it. Each thing is individually distorted in such a way that works well, so that when they blend together, they become a big, angry, cohesive unit, but still clear.
It's not fair to deny me all the cross-eyed men. I check it to me. You oughta know.
I mean, if I was going back to mix this now for 2022, I wouldn't change very much apart from the bass tone, or I'd probably give it a lot more sub bass, take a little bit of that kind of honk out. Not much more, honestly. The drum loops kind of sound like they're in place. The bass was fine for the mid-90s because it was a lot more of a Wild West at the time, that, you know, there wasn't really a kind of accepted standard. If it sounded good, it sounded good. And a lot of stereos in 1996, a lot of hi-fi systems didn't have extended low end. And even when they kind of did, you wanted that to be left for the kick drum. It's only maybe from very late 90s, 2000s onwards when a lot of musical styles really came together. Like, you know, you've got the kind of hip hop sound blending into the rock sound, blending into the pop sound. All the technology became available, and generally like MP3 players and stuff became available, where suddenly lots of low end was a good thing. So yeah, that's something to think about for sure. And that was a fantastic song with a very direct mix, very simple technically. But yeah, the kind of thing you couldn't really replicate now, but it was definitely of its time and sounded fantastic. So there you go. Thanks everybody for watching. Big thanks to the patrons on Patreon. You all helped me to do this. And big thanks to everybody who's watched. Let me know in the comments below what songs you would like me to look at next, and I will check those out and break those down on a Mix React video. Thanks everybody, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.